Hello, when Will Duffy officially announced what was happening with the final experiment, I believe it was around this time here that I made this video predicting how the sun should appear to move in the sky. I think in that one there, I also added a few suggestions of my own to make the experiment a little bit better. And one thing that I did at that time was I started working on a document. And I was thinking of all of the various things that could happen, such as how flat earthers would react, how they would not trust the results. I came up with an idea that would use technology and various forms of encryption with the intent of using that to create kind of like a digital signature when sending out emails that contain photos of the sun using asymmetric encryption to ensure that whatever is encrypted and sent to whoever owns the private key, that only they can decrypt and recover the original message. Then I got into some of the other interesting challenges that they might face, such as what kind of internet access might they have? How much bandwidth would be available? Would they even be able to do anything like that? And then environmental limitations, such as what would the temperature do to the equipment? Would there be enough electricity to run all of the equipment that they plan to bring there? So on and so forth. And I even mentioned a few interesting ideas, like maybe taking a camping solar panel with them. When it comes to keeping the equipment warm, especially lithium ion batteries do not like the cold. And if they remain in an environment that is cold, the batteries can discharge and possibly become damaged, and they may not even have enough charge to last even the duration. So I thought of a few ideas, such as getting one of those portable coolers that you can get and modifying it that has a resistive heater and a thermostat and everything so that it can provide and maintain a suitable temperature inside. And so when they're not taking pictures with a specific camera, they could maybe bring 2 or 3 cameras and swap them out as needed to ensure that the cameras remain relatively warm through the duration of the expedition. That's about as far as I got. Then I got distracted with the various predictions and whether or not the sun would be eclipsed by Mount Rossmann, etc. And so I focused my attention on that. The idea was that I was eventually going to come up with something that was more or less full of all of the ideas that I had, and I would give Will Duffy the link to it. And I'll probably just make this available as is. And you can see that the last time I modified it was May 28th. So I haven't really modified it since I started to dump my ideas out into this document. What might be nice is if Will Duffy could do something similar and make it available to everyone. And if it's at least read-only viewable mode by the general public, it'll give everybody an idea of the various preparatory thoughts that have gone towards this expedition. It might even give more credibility with enough people understanding all the various ideas and thought and preparation that has gone into it. And of course, if Will Duffy did set something up like that, he could limit editing access to a handful of trusted people. The main thing that I wanted to focus in this video today deals with how flat earthers seem to be reacting to all of this so far and how I suspect it will go by the time everything is done. Quite frankly, I do not think that they have a very good track record for consistency or for reasonable fairness when it comes to seeing videos that are on the internet. When they see something that goes against their bias, they will dismiss it as any number of deceptions, such as it's CGI, it's NASA trying to hide the truth, it's the Illuminati, it's green alien lizard people, who knows what. I suspect that there's going to be something very similar going on with this. Even if the expedition went down and was able to take pictures for the full 24 hours, when they return, the flat earthers, I'm convinced, will still be able to come up with some weird sort of excuse. the expedition was kidnapped, or they were brainwashed, or they were threatened with their lives, or their shills, or they've been replaced by aliens, or whatever. And I'm just predicting at this point that somebody is going to come out and claim that all of the evidence produced by the expedition is manufactured, that they were standing in front of a green screen, for example, or that they were taken elsewhere, or there was somehow some kind of Project Bluebeam device that somehow got set up without their knowing on that location, and that they're not really seeing the sun, that they're seeing some kind of projection by this device that's buried in the snow or something, who knows what. So really the trick is going to be to somehow manage to convince them as much as we can, and this is where this video is going to come in. When it comes to identification, there are tools and technologies out there already. A lot of us have probably used some form of it in the past. Whether we have to use some kind of hardware token for work, or whether we want to set up some kind of two-factor authentication, there are tools out there that will make it harder for somebody else to spoof our identity, such as the Google Authenticator. I'm not going to cover how it works. You can do some research on your own. It's fairly simple and straightforward. Another challenge that the expedition may face is being able to make sure that what they send out is properly received and properly acknowledged as real to a specific audience. And borrowing on the secure HTTP method, HTTPS, there is a form of authentication that happens with use of asymmetric encryption keys. Again, I'm not going to cover how this works. When you have a message that is encrypted with one specific key, only the other key is able to decrypt it. And another thing that I wanted to talk about, there is the idea that when you send out an email, you can apply a digital signature, and it works on a very similar principle as the asymmetric key. Your email client, for example, when you generate a digital signature, will create an asymmetric encryption key pair. You will then publish your public key, and your email is encrypted, or rather a portion or a fingerprint, if you will, of the email is encrypted with your private key, and the encrypted content is attached to the email so that anybody who receives it sees that it's got a digital signature. They'll be able to publicly decrypt the digital signature, and with use of the public key, they're able to verify that the message itself was not altered in communication. We have methods and ways of ensuring that whatever is sent meets certain standards in terms of authenticity, or perhaps even in the case of digital signatures, ensure that the email itself has not been tampered or altered in transit. So that brings me to the best way that I can think of to ensure that when the expedition is in situ, that they are able to somehow convince everybody that they really are there, and that the sun that they see is above the horizon for the entire duration. And I explained earlier that you can bring 1,000 memory cards and you can fill them full of pictures for the entire duration that they were there. I am still convinced that somehow flat earthers will have a hard time accepting the results. And there really isn't much that can be done after the fact. Once the expedition is over, there's really no way of being able to go back and take more pictures to prove whatever crazy point that they're trying to make. And of course, that means that the best way to do that is to convince as many people as possible that they really are there, that they really do see the sun, and that they're not making it up, as best as they can. So the suggestion that I am making is going to be that the expedition crew develops a certain set of steps or guidelines that they can follow when they are there, to maximize the chances that they can convince as many people that they really are there. The best way that I can think of doing that is taking a picture of the sun with one or more of the participants in frame, also showing a GPS receiver with their location and some form of authentication at regular intervals. Ideally, it would be nice to go on social media, look at a random video and copy paste something from their chat, for example, or take a phrase that somebody has posted from Twitter or whatever and include or incorporate that chat message into some form of authenticator. As for that authenticator, I spent a few hours not long ago working on a very simple JavaScript-based web page. It's all run self-contained, so they don't need access to the internet. They could theoretically load that on a laptop, for example, and it uses the public-private key that I talked about earlier, with the idea that we could potentially have something with more than one public-private key pair, and that it would generate some kind of authentication token unique for each one of these key pair combinations. So in this case, I generated a public-private key. This is what that key looks like, and I just hid the private key with black on black. You can see what it looks like when I copy paste it. This would be the private key for this. In essence, the only thing that would need to be displayed would be this part over here. And the principle works on the idea of a given timestamp, which I've expressed here in Zulu time, along with some random phrase. And if I encrypt it every single time, you can see that all of this remains the same. But given that this is meant to make it harder for somebody to intercept and decode every time you encrypt this, you can see that the encrypted phrase changes. It uses random data to accomplish that. If I change the phrase to something else like that, you can see that the key phrase has changed even though it's the same date. I just hacked something up like this here so that for this particular encryption key right over here, I can decrypt it and it contains the original message. It contains the generic checksum of this phrase along with some sort of mock-like Google Authenticator code. Somebody could send them a message and say, oh, hey, the next time you report, can you use this phrase? And so when they oblige, that would be the result. And coming back a little bit more to the idea of Google Authenticator or something like that, I've got a few options where they can have the clock timer tick away constantly. And if they check this, then it can update this entire thing every 30 seconds. I'm not necessarily saying that they could or should use my tool. They could use something or anything that is similar. Will Duffy could reach out to security experts and get their opinion on how he can go about ensuring the expedition's ability to authenticate themselves. So when they are there in situ, an idea that I envisioned was that they could have something like a GPS receiver that can clearly show their coordinates, and maybe a tablet or something like that that has some form of one-time based authenticator kind of code that's constantly changing so that they can clearly see that at this given time that's on this iPad or maybe on this GPS receiver, the sun is over there. 20 minutes later, the time has changed, the code has changed, so on and so forth. This would be very useful even when they come back afterwards to show that they were really there, that the entire 24 hours was represented properly. Dave McKeegan, for example, might dedicate one specific camera for that task while they take additional photos, such as with or without a solar filter, taking pictures of the sunspots, etc. From time to time, they can post copies of the pictures that they've taken on social media and somehow maybe in the general community to raise awareness of the experiment in real time, so that every time they post such a video or such an image that a small army of people can forward that and help ensure that the images are being taken at regular intervals so that there's less excuse in the end for people to say, well, you never really went, you never really said anything, that you just went away and fabricated the evidence for 3 months before you started making videos, etc., etc., etc. If posting on social media is problematic, or if there's not enough bandwidth to do that at regular intervals, another option would be to take pictures of social media that may be relatively low bandwidth. Maybe it's a Facebook account, maybe it's a Twitter feed, maybe it's nothing more than Google News, for example. So you could take a screenshot of that with one of the pictures that you've taken earlier above. So if you had one of these pictures, put that on the screen as well, and then take a screenshot of the entire monitor. Then you can send that out to somebody by email, such as, for example, maybe a mailing list. So those are the latest suggestions from ideas that I came up with. Hope that's going to be useful for the expedition, and hope you like this video with that, so you know what to do. And with that, I'm going to see you again in another video soon enough. So bye for now.